Man, what a wild, wild week it's been. And not just with data on the internet. So I'm on Twitter, and there's all these, vile, evil Jews and non-Jews pushing weed. Now, they only care about money. But they mask their greed with altruism. Oh, it's for the vets with the PTSD, and the pedophiles need to rape kids, and they can't do that without the weed. Basically. So the pedophiles that run the world, the Epstein Island client list, are definitely the ones behind weed. It's the Jews, but not just the Jews. And not all Jews, but I can't really name hardly any Jews that are against marijuana. I can name victims that are Jewish of the marijuana industry. But most of the Jews are the pushers, not the opposers. Oof. Sorry. We'll get into that in a sec, the burps. Where to begin? So, I moved into this house in Richmond. The guy was a professor at BCU, a chemistry professor. And he resigned because he supported Israel, and there was a bunch of pro-Palestine students, and, he was like, no, the Jews are God's chosen people. He's a boomer. He's brainwashed with that Holocaust propaganda. Big pro-marijuana guy, anti-climate change, so he's displaying a lot of psych symptoms. Excuse me. I think I might have stomach cancer, and this non-alcoholic kombucha seems to be helping. So, he spat in the direction of the students that were cussing and spitting at him, and that caused him to resign for supporting Israel because of October 7th. Of all the symptoms the guy displays, I'm just going to list some of them. He is detached from his surroundings. Everything about this house that he owns that I'm renting, the inside and the outside, amongst other symptoms, display a significant detachment from reality. A separation from reality could be disassociation. I've been dealing with a lot of involuntary secondhand exposure, which is causing a disability, a disruption, a difficulty in finding the words that I need to form a sentence, and maintaining focus for complete sentences. So this house, vines overgrowing it on the outside. I pulled a bunch of them down in exchange for him to cover the utilities. When he first advertised this place on Craigslist, the price was $575. Then he upped it to $650. The old bait and switch. And wanted me to cover the utilities. So I said, well, I'll be property maintenance, you cover the utilities. He agreed to that. Then all of a sudden he went back on his word and tried to say, oh, well, up to solar power is in this electricity bank. Once you pass $20 on that, then you got to pay for it yourself. I'm like, what the fuck is this slave labor shit? He wants me to do all this hard fucking labor on his property but doesn't want to pay me for it. On top of that, fleas. What I was contributing to cannabis-induced dementia, he has this empathy for fleas. He cannot stand the emotional suffering of the fleas when they're killed. So he hand brushes the fleas off of his cat and puts them in a bin, and he thinks that's proper containment. It's not. I have a ton of flea bites now. But I got a flea trap. Got 12 dead fleas in there right now. The vines that I pulled off the side of the house were decades old. It's the first time I've seen ivy vine with a 3-inch diameter root. He is emotionally manipulated by political content on Facebook. Republicans are destroying the environment. Oh, Trump. One of his testimonies, or his word, according to him, is that he had quit smoking pot back at like decades ago, over 20 years ago, because it started to make him depressed and paranoid. But then he decided to try it again as an old person. And so he bought 1 gram from Colorado, and he still has most of that gram, and half a joint. It's so stupid. So I'm telling him that secondhand cannabis sets off my schizophrenia. He agrees, we're not going to let it on the property. And then he moves this black guy in here who hasn't moved in yet because of his, drug-addicted dementia. The fleas and the neglect of the property, and it took him 7 days longer to move out than he said he would be out so the guy could be in. Among so many other symptoms. So he lied to me, and the new roommate lied to me. Everyone's lying to me. The worst thing about forensic psychology and detecting deception is everyone is fucking lying to me. He told me, oh yeah, the new roommate's a smoker. I said, smoking what? Cigarettes. Roommate shows up. I smell the weed directly on the roommate and then out of his car. I try to report it to the police. This guy's driving while under the influence. I can't even get a hold of the cops. The whole defund the police, Black Lives Matter shit. The police out here are fucking useless to non-existent. Undoubtedly, they're very diverse and, biracial. And but there was I couldn't even understand the lady. The phone connection was so bad. And nobody showed up. Nobody did anything. So the landlord lied to me. The guy knew he smoked weed, but told me it was cigarettes because he's greedy. He wants money. 2 tenants means income. And then he tells me, oh, well, he's not going to smoke on the property. But then he gives that guy permission to smoke on the property as long as it's in the backyard or something. And so I said, well, you're telling me you didn't know he was smoking weed, but then you gave him permission to smoke weed on the property. You're lying to me. Apparently he doesn't like it when someone he's lying to points out that he's lying. So he's like, I don't like it when you tell me that stuff. What a fucking nightmare. So, the whole point of moving to Richmond was to get a job. I've applied to a bunch of places. I've had 3 interviews. I had one yesterday through a Microsoft Teams meeting. I try to do the thing where I embrace it. I just can't escape it. If I move out of here, there's going to be weed somewhere else because the Epstein Island client list is pushing marijuana globally. It's a globalist agenda. It's a smaller part of a larger plan. So the first interview I had was at a behavioral institution. And I thought, well, I've got to drop off a package for Amazon, the UPS store, to do not a refund, but a return, so they'll send me a replacement. And then I got to drop off these Hannibal Lecter 2014 Blu-rays at Walmart because just like the ones from Amazon, these ones won't play in my Blu-ray player because different companies have different patents on their chips that just aren't compatible or something. It's so fucking... Globalism sucks. I could just fucking Google the goddamn shit that I wanted. Hannibal Lecter, full series, Blu-ray, and I'd get it. No, I get this weird shit from fucking Asia that doesn't even fucking play in this other fucking disc player that I get from Asia. And I got hit with so much secondhand weed. Just bicycling from here, 24 minutes to UPS store, 22 minutes to Walmart, 10 minutes to fucking interview. Show up at the interview. The diversity manager, this town is a 51% black. That's another hilarious observation. The landlord is white, and he's a white liberal atheist. Now, I'm going to go on some tangents here. When I left Lynchburg, the white Christian conservatives were forcing blacks, marijuana, and gays on me. And I almost moved to Roanoke, where a gay white Jew, who's a reformed Jew, he's not just ethnically Jewish, he's also religiously Jewish, tried to force blacks, gays, and marijuana on me. And instead I moved to Richmond, where this white liberal atheist is forcing blacks, gays, and marijuana on me. Apparently Richmond is now like 49% black. The blacks are out breeding the whites because they make a bunch of rape babies. And that was a point he brought up as a, climate change activist, progressive liberal. So he said, well, why aren't we telling the blacks not to have kids? He's racist to tell blacks to not do the climate change? What a fucking moron. What a dickless fucking pussy, dude. What? Anyway. So the diversity manager who interviewed me, he was black and didn't read my resume, so I wasn't even eligible for the job he was interviewing me for. It was a licensed nurse practitioner. I do not have my license as a nurse practitioner, so I cannot be hired as an LNP for this clinic, psych ward intake job. But he did tell me about a certification I can get in the state of Virginia that will make me eligible for entry-level jobs in the psych field. You need a bachelor's to get that, but they have an exception if you're as close as I am, only, 2 semesters away from my bachelor's. If my school fills out a didactic education core content verification form. And that's just, ethics and boundaries and legalities and, stuff like that. Well, my current university can't do it because I recently transferred. So I have to contact Liberty if I want that form filled out. Liberty, my experience with them is that they are corrupt, fucked up assholes. So I don't really trust them. I don't really think I can just say, oh, hey, remember me, that guy that you totally fucked over because you guys are fucking evil? Can you help me get a job by filling out this form? The same people that tried to fucking Jew me out of my credits? Yeah, fucking right. The same people who do not lift a finger to oppose marijuana legalization, but aggressively enforce race mixing on their students. So that's one of the reasons they targeted me for this persecution, was for saying the truth. I kept noticing that the only explanation for these details, like Liberty pushing race mixing, but also pushing marijuana, was it seemed very Jewish, right? Like the Epstein Island client list was controlling Liberty. Like Israel was controlling the Christian churches and all organized religions. Well, I did some Googling, and the executive director is a Jew whose last name is Schultz. So, there's my answer, right? That explains a lot. Anyway, so then, speaking of Jews, coming out to Richmond, I visited the Holocaust Museum. It was a pretty, very interesting experience. They had photographs. See, I did not know this. Apparently, after the camps were liberated, Jews stayed living in them all the way up until 1953. The concentration camps were occupied with Jews who had nowhere else to go until 1953. There was a boat, more than one, but one particularly that got turned away from the United States and everywhere else. Nobody wanted these fleas, these Jews, right? The Jewish louse. And it just didn't make sense to me that if it was a death camp and all the fucking Auschwitz propaganda, well then why would they stay living in these camps 8 years after liberation? 5 years after the state of Israel was founded? Anyway, so the diversity hire told me this thing. That was the first interview. The second interview was through a Microsoft Teams thing. And some secondhand weed came in from, the windows in this room behind me here, from the roommate who smokes it on the sidewalk in his car. And that was an interesting thing, because I'm telling the landlord, the air from inside comes from the outside. The air that I breathe inside the house comes from the air outside of the house. So if someone's smoking weed outside, it's going to get sucked in through the cooling pump, through the cooling unit, and then I'm going to get hit with secondhand weed. I don't think that's how it works, man. This is the flea guy, right? Who fucking just let his property go to shit. He told me he wants to sell his house in a couple years, but the neglect is so bad. It's been devalued pretty horribly because of his cannabis use. His, detachment from reality. So, I hope I did good in that interview. My theory is I only have two options: death or just embrace the weed. So I tried embracing it, and I've tried embracing it before multiple times. It always fails. I'm not lying, I'm not making it up. It really does cause psychosis, including schizophrenia. I know that, the government knows that, whatever few honest people are left in the world, they all know that. But I get hit with these aggressive liars on the internet who are just aggressively opposed to the truth, and they will attack the truth immediately, almost instinctively, like, oh my god, this truth is gonna hurt profit. Bleh. And you get them on every fucking website. So all social media, all technology, it's just cattle control by the elites for the masses. And these people, these aggressive marijuana propagandists, that's all they are. They're just social agents of social control, right? Social control agents. So, theory is my liver, pancreas will start producing more enzymes to break it down. So then my metabolism will start to increase for cannabinoids that are involuntarily being put in my bloodstream against my will and without my consent. So my self-observed symptoms from this secondhand exposure, which sucks. So the last place I was living at was actually marijuana-free in Powhatan. But that stupid lady had to sell her house because her boyfriend didn't move in with her like she thought he would, and he was the income she was counting on. So that sucked, because I got a message from them. They wanted to hire me, the company that I applied to out there. And that would have been a marijuana-free living place. Anyway. So yeah, trouble with focusing, with learning. I'm already falling behind in school because of this. And it's weird because the landlord and the roommate and everyone else, they will aggressively lie to me as well. They will deny that this exists. And then I'll prove that it does. And they have this cannabis-induced moral disengagement and sensory disengagement from reality. The reality outside of their head does not penetrate to the inside of their mind, so they don't acknowledge it exists because they're numb to reality. That's what drugs do. So I have trouble in the interview as well with, finding the right words, the right sentences. Memory recall. I think my hippocampus, that retrieves memory that's encoded from short-term to long-term. I need to pull it out from the memory storage bank on the spot in the interview. That was interrupted a little bit, but I think I did pretty good, so I do hope I get the job. She could tell something was off because she suggested that if they do proceed with hiring me, that they might apply a competency test. And that could just mean changing diapers one-handed, but I'm pretty sure she could tell that some of my sentences were broken and fucked up from this exposure to secondhand marijuana against my will and without my consent. While this is going on, Twitter is flooding with marijuana propaganda from the Jews, the Epstein Island clan list. Not just the Jews, a lot of Gentiles also love the drugs. I've had Nazis call me a Jew for opposing weed. Mike Tyson, the guy... I started asking AI, did Mike Tyson, was cannabis present when he committed his rape? It wouldn't answer. I'm doing the 3 AIs right now, Google, Meta, and Grok, and comparing their answers with each other. This is forensic psychology. But in these searches and whatnot, I also attended a synagogue in person, which I hope to attend again. And they let me attend for the first half and then kicked me out before the talk on political Zionism. I thought that was odd. The food in the, what Christians would call a parish hall, I'm not sure what it's called in the synagogue, but the room where everybody socializes and eats food, they had signs on the table that said adults only, 18 plus, and I figured, well, I don't think there's alcohol in that because that would be 21 plus. I bet there's cannabis in the Jewish food. What if the Zionists are using the cannabis as a cognitive enhancer to help them kill, innocent Gazans and Iranians in that psychosis? What if they're weaponizing marijuana? Not just to, kill people like me, American browns, Middle Eastern browns, fucking whites, whatever. But yeah, to kill Middle Easterners and Iranians as well. And so that's part of Zionism. Now, cannabis is a Hebrew word, kenes basum, which means fragrant herb or fragrant flower. Aramaic, I might think. Or it might be Aramaic, I think. Yeah, you see what I mean? I don't think they know that is the exact plant that word describes. In Job, the Jews translate the word Kasil to Orion, which is a Greek word. I don't think that specific constellation might even be the same constellation that they're naming in modern times that was in the ancient, Dead Sea Scroll Hebrew from 3,000 years ago. I don't believe them when they claim that they tested marijuana at the fucking temple, right? Where Moses offered the sacrifice. Moses never made it into the Holy Land, so they're already full of shit. But I highly doubt that weed resin would last on bricks for over 1,000 years of rain and sunshine. I'm skeptical to that as well. Nonetheless, these vile, evil, wicked Jews have to push weed to Jew the Goyim. And so I began to ask the rabbi about this. And I sent him an email where I said, the Roman side of the story versus the Jewish side of the story for Bet HaMikdash, the destruction of the temple. And the Roman side of the story is that Jews had infiltrated the Roman Empire and were committing usury from within the empire. They infiltrated, subverted, and were destroying it from within. And he, I said, well, this makes sense because in modern times, Jews are 2% of the U.S. population, but over 50% of the billionaires. And he responded by saying, oh, well, Jews are only 30% of the population, or 30% of the billionaires. I hadn't heard that one yet, so I Googled it, did the AI deep dive, and asked the other. Meta would not tell me until I said, oh, well, Google's telling me, and then it told me. It's like turning two jealous girlfriends against each other. Oh, well, she'll put out if you won't. Okay, I'll put out. AI is like jealous girlfriends. It's fucking hilarious. Grok wouldn't answer at all. So, Jews were 2% of the U.S. population and 30% of the billionaires in 2010. According to Forbes, in March of 2025, they are now 67% of the billionaires, despite being 2% of the population. Now, between 2010 and 2025, there was a lot of marijuana legalization policy shifts. So, it seems really, really obvious to me to draw this conclusion that Jews were behind the marijuana legalization policy shifts, and those shifts contributed to that 30% to 67%, billionaire income increase amongst Jews. And so then I asked, Jews in positions of leadership within the marijuana advocacy, etc. And initially it didn't want to name them, then it started to name a whole bunch. Jewish disproportionate overrepresentation in the cannabis industry. There's a lot. And that's funny because Google is information suppressing. The Jews run Google, they run the FBI, they run everything. It's a political Zionism. And they do strategy and network in the synagogues. That's why I was asked to leave, I think, before they did the cannabis and political Zionism, plotting and scheming. Not all synagogues. I've been in contact with another synagogue in Albuquerque. Not the same as this synagogue in Richmond. But COVID happened between 2010 and 2025. And that was economic terraforming. And so did mass immigration. So I had Googled, is the immigration between 2010 and 2025 significantly higher than the last 50 years? And again, they tried to bullshit me, they tried to deceive me. It was like pulling teeth. But the truth came out even from Google's AI and Meta. And it said, yes, it's 53 million foreign-born immigrants on American soil, the highest it's ever been in the history of the United States. And this includes the migrant waves of the 1860s and the early 1900s, etc. So the Jews weaponized marijuana to facilitate mass migration, population reduction, and replacement with drugs and porn. Eugenesis. Eugenics is Jewish. Of course, there's non-Jews. There's straight up Anglo-Saxon involvement. But I thought, well, why didn't the FBI conduct surveillance on these synagogues? It's a fair question. I mean, the FBI is always saying white supremacy is the greatest threat, but it wasn't white supremacy that facilitated 53 million immigrants to come into America. And it's not white supremacy that's pushing marijuana. So I Googled it. I asked Meta AI and Google AI. Grok wouldn't answer. There's a lot of questions Grok refuses to answer. To name Jews in positions of leadership within the FBI. Now, I have all these screenshots because undoubtedly Google monitors my Twitter and they're going to, Jew the Google and these results will vanish. Even having the screenshots doesn't really make a big difference at all. But it feels good to me to know the truth and archive it. Even if fucking Jews will use social media to suppress the truth. Anyway, bunch of Jews in positions of leadership in the FBI. And not just Merrick Garland. There's a ton. They're called Boo Jews. Bujews. The FBI's most best kept secret, according to Times of Israel or Eretz or something. So, white supremacy was the biggest potential obstruction to Jewish power, overthrowing the United States government, taking control of the government. When I retrospectively analyze my experience with my ex-fiance, I saw that she strategically places herself in positions of trust in order to manipulate from that position of trust, at greater benefit to her and greater expense to the person she's manipulating. So when Israel says they are our greatest ally, but they're the ones behind, marijuana and mass immigration and the LGBTQ agenda, etc., they're just like her. They're not really your friend. They're your worst enemy pretending to be your friend. So our greatest ally is actually our greatest enemy and the greatest threat to this country, but wears the mask of friendship. Yeah, I'm your greatest ally, buddy. That's why you need more immigrants and drugs and porn. A nation weakened by drugs is more susceptible to invasion. It's not just the opium wars that we saw that. But I can't escape it. The Jews, the 30% to 67% of the billionaire Jews, they are not going to stop out of consideration of the victims of their agendas, their industries, their, globalism. Nothing will stop them short of a bullet in the head. And even that, I don't even think that'll stop them. They're hell-bent on this. They could give a fuck less. The FBI is not stopping them. The fucking CIA, the United States government, it's owned by them. The political Zionists have taken control of those agencies as well. Maybe they always have been. I have no idea. But as all this is going on, so I think it's been about 2 months ago now. Well, months and months ago, actually, since January, I began to do a poverty fast where I would only eat 1 meal a day. And I began to lose a ton of weight. And in losing that weight, I think I found tumors that were... The pain started in the lower right abdomen here and gradually moved up to here. And then it's a tumor. I felt it move on the mid-lower right side, not where the appendix is, but where the ascending colon is, about 3 inches up from the lower right corner. And I think the fasting, and then I got this electric acupressure device from Amazon, and it was really great, and I was doing Tai Chi, and the Tai Chi lifestyle produced better cognitive control. I wasn't looking at porn so much. I think I went weeks without porn, things like that. And a big factor in that was that house that I was living in Lynchburg. The guy did not care about the electricity, so I was running air purifiers almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and so no secondhand marijuana. But I didn't leave the house for a month and a half. It's so fucked up. They're so fucking evil. So that tumor began to climb up, and then it split. It metastasized, I think. And so I've got another little baby tumor that has gone in my hepatic portal, and then I've also got pain superior to the rib bone here. It could not be tumors. I have no idea. I tried to get help. I tried to get a doctor's appointment. I lived in Lynchburg for over a year and finally got a doctor's appointment and then found out I was moving, so I had to cancel it. Out here, I tried to call fucking social services. I couldn't even get a hold of them. So it's not like I can even go see a fucking doctor, let alone get, scanned and biopsied and all that shit. So I'm guessing that this pain in my abdomen, it went up here. Yeah, there it is. I think I got a little tiny tumor right here. I can feel the pain. Yeah. And then more pain here where the pancreas is, the diaphragm. A lot of pain here where my stomach is and the where the traversing colon meets the descending colon. And that went down. And the pain was so bad yesterday that I could not sleep last night. Now, normally people don't experience pain in your internal organs, especially in the abdomen, unless there's a serious problem. But I am happy to embrace death if it means getting away from weed. These people are so fucked up. And this is what the Jewish, world-eating Epstein client list, CIA types, FBI, this is what they all want. It's population reduction. It's not about global warming, because why would you bring in 53 million immigrants if you're trying to reduce the population to reduce climate change? How does that make any sense? No, it's a globalist agenda. But I thought about doing a deathbed confession for the weed dealer I killed and stuff like that, if that even happened. But no, I'll probably end up living. It could be stomach cancer. It could not be. I have no idea. It's not like I can get help, care, or support. But if I do end up dying, it will literally, I'll be killed by abandonment, neglect, and isolation. I called my cousin in all this, and that's weird, because that's exactly what these weed-pushing, porn-pushing, Epstein client people hate, is family unity, right? They're breaking apart families. And so for me to just call my cousin to try to reconnect, that act of family bond strengthening, unification, that goes against globalism. And it seemed to have this energy effect, of like countering all their vile, evil, hateful, hatred, agenda pushing, marijuana, porn pushing, globalist, kill the Goyim, replace Americans with foreign populations, become billionaires in the process with marijuana and COVID and etc., mass immigration, etc. type stuff. Even just now, it felt like I was going to die. The same way it did last night. That's how bad it hurts. There's also a lot of pain right here in the center. I have no idea what that's about. It could be a rupture. It could be a tumor. But I know that's the same spot that a lot of beta-alanine, when I was taking the supplement, had built up. So it might be like a ripped part of my intestine. I have no idea. I'm thinking of taking more beta-alanine just to, because it's been a few months. And that really did seem to have this effect on the, what is it called there? The peristaltic contractions in the nervous system of my intestines that, cause the movement of the intestines to force food down to poop, etc. Gastric motility. But as it felt like I was dying or going to die, I could hear Jews chanting Nigunim. And that is a very poor reflection on my family, because I was seeing like Jewish spirits, right? The souls of Jews, dead and alive, and sort of like this space between the afterlife and the current life. I wasn't hearing Mexican Catholic songs. I wasn't hearing, any santuario like Católica. And I wasn't seeing members of my family. I was seeing Jews. So maybe I have become spiritually Jewish in all those months that I've lived kosher and then Shmona Esrei, the 18 prayers a day. Despite Jews in real life being like evil, vile, hateful, kill all the Goyim, weed-pushing, billionaire assholes. Which is interesting, because that means just as they infiltrated the Roman Empire and committed usury from within, they've infiltrated the American Empire and committed usury from within. Marijuana banking is one example of their usury. Connecticut did an assessment. I've got so many screenshots, but I might be able to find it. Might not. But in this assessment, they found that while the cannabis industry was poised to make $156 odd dollars in taxes, it would actually cost the taxpayer 200 and something odd dollars. Yeah. In social services, strain, ER visits, etc. So, for every $1 the cannabis industry makes, it costs the taxpayer roughly $3 to $4. I think was the thing. Yeah. I got so many screenshots. I'll try to find it later. Anyway, I think I forgot to make this point, but the landlord is hilarious because when I told him that I had gone to a McDonald's to the north of here, he said, "Oh no, don't go to that neighborhood. We're in the good neighborhood," which is the white neighborhood with very low marijuana use. So what makes the other neighborhood bad is the black smoking marijuana. Therefore, as a liberal, he's going to bring black smoking marijuana into his house in the good white marijuana-free neighborhood. Okay. This is why death seems like a nice option. I'm so tired of this shit. I shouldn't have to be putting up with this. This is very unfair. I shouldn't have to deal with this at all. I should have the right to live not high. I shouldn't have to go through this every fucking time that I move, just to move again. I talked to my dad, and I kept trying to get him to tell me what the price was, the dollar amount that he sold my inheritance for, the land that I was supposed to inherit through the Spanish land grant. Now, my dad and my Aunt Geraldine can provide stable, drug-free housing. They are both choosing not to. Stable, drug-free housing facilitates employment. So, what kind of fucked up, horrible family would rather push me towards drugs and homelessness and all that shit instead of supporting me, saying no to drugs and getting a job and stuff like that? I mean, now I'm saying no to drugs, but I'm still ending up with forced drugging, right? Forced high against my will and without my consent through secondhand exposure, which is causing significant suicidal, homicidal thoughts, mostly suicidal, very, very little homicidal thoughts, hallucinations, voices in my head, etc. What a fucking nightmare to be alive. And it's insane that the FBI, law enforcement, they're okay with that, right? Marijuana growers can cause children to be burned alive. That's happened. That's documented. Parents smoking weed, burn their house down with their kids in it. More than one occasion. One woman, 3 of her kids burned alive. She left the stove running, left her kids alone unattended. 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Went out to go score marijuana. House burned down while she was gone with the kids trapped inside. Girl in Oregon smoking her bong and left it lit. The kid woke her up when the house was on fire. She ran outside, stoned out of her fucking mind. Forgot about the kid. Watched the house burn down with her 4-year-old son trapped inside because she was so stoned. Oh, fuck, my kid's dead, man. They're okay with that. And the FBI is like, oh, that's kosher. And fuck the goyim. But when I go saying, no, this is fucked up. The only way to save your kids from this shit, from these drug pushers, is to kill your local weed dealer. All of a sudden, I'm the target of investigations. But the marijuana pushers are allowed to murder with impunity? I saw a thumbnail from the Andrew Breitbart BitChute channel, which is ironic. Donald Trump smoking weed with the Snoop Dogg glasses. Because, black gangster rap represents Christian conservative values. According to Jews. Breitbart was Jewish. Well, Breitbart died of a fucking cardiovascular arrest, which marijuana causes cardiovascular arrests. It's so fucking retarded. It's so full of shit. Liskowitz. Liskowitz is a very Ashkenazi name. So there's a Jewish victim of the Jewish weed pushers. Liskowitz was an Olympic athlete. He was in the top 25 of the nation for the shot put and stuff like that. And he only did the hemp products, only CBD, not THC, which is, when you heat it up, it becomes THC. And it's a whole lie. Oh, hemp isn't weed. Yeah, it fucking is. CBD is THC. Shut the fuck up. It's the C in THC. So that caused him to go into acute psychosis, where he was actually hospitalized in a mental asylum in Baton Rouge. And then on his way back home to Jersey, where he first started doing the edibles and the vapes and the drinks, he somehow thought he was returning to the FBI to turn himself in, even though they weren't looking for him and he hadn't committed a crime, right? Cannabis-induced psychosis, which was his diagnosis in Baton Rouge. He ended up jumping out of the window of his mom's car on some bridge in Jersey and fucked himself up, hitting the, asphalt at a high speed, and then jumped off the bridge and fell 135 feet. Broke his legs, his arms, etc. Suing 732 companies for his suicide attempt in cannabis-induced psychosis. So this is like Jewzilla versus Jew Kong. You got a Jewish victim of the Jewish drug pushers. It's going to be like the Trump impeachment trial. It's going to feel Talmudic because there's going to be Jewish lawyers on both sides. But the companies have already filed a motion to dismiss because they only marketed it. They didn't manufacture the product. They didn't design the product. They didn't package it. They didn't distribute it. They only sold it. So there's no liability. It was legal after all. So it's okay for these Jews to cause these suicides with the hemp, CBD, and marijuana products they're pushing because they own the banks. And the banks make the laws. And the cops, the Zogbots, are like, "Oh, yes, sir, Master Jew." That evil anti-Semite. I mean, yeah, he's never caused all these suicides and children being burned alive, but it's illegal, goyim, because we own the banks and we own the judges, and we purchase politicians like prostitutes. Death is a way better option than having to live in such a fucked world. Is it my fault that, law enforcement, government, FBI, CIA failed to stop political corruption from screwing the pooch this bad? No. What the fuck? Why should I have to suffer because they're a bunch of fucked up pieces of shit and all law enforcement agencies are too corrupt to fucking do anything about it? My crime is being poor, and if the poor protect themselves from the rich, and by the rich, mostly I mean Jews, if they were 30% of the billionaires in 2010 and 67% in 2025, odds are a majority of the Epstein Island client list is anti-Semitic. And it also includes Mike Tyson. I figured that out because he's sitting there pushing weed. And I'm like, oh, this is more globalist puppetry. He's either an Epstein Island client or a puppet pawn of the Epstein Island client list, or a mixture of both. How the fuck? There is no God, is what I'm thinking as well. Because how the fuck could anyone let shit get this bad? Especially God. If there is a God, well, he's either asleep at the wheel, he's absent, or he's fucking evil. So it just makes a lot more sense to think there is no God. At the same time, if the stomach cancer kills me, it definitely felt like I was transitioning into some sort of heaven or afterlife.